So hello to anyone tuning in to check the video out, and yes, here is our next derby car, another Buick. We had some good and bad fortune with our Buick last year. We had the Buick Lacrosse last year. I believe it was the same year as this one. This is a 2007 Buick Lacrosse, and we are looking to derby her about 2 weeks from now. So a little bit of a wet early morning here, but the rain stopped until the afternoon. We're going to start diving into her. A couple people, again, post them on Marketplace. Got the headlights, 2 of the tires, which I'm actually going to put spare tires on the back. I have one with this car, and I've got another one from an older car that should work. I'm going to make sure that works before I sell them. But selling those, selling a mirror, as well as a couple other stuff. So you get a little bit of money for it and kind of get back to even. But this car is pretty solid. I mean, again, you know, they leave the road, referring to they're rusted out. And this one in the back part of the car is pretty rusted, especially around like the rear axles and kind of the back part where the trunk is. There's a lot of rust. Front is pretty clean. And again, the front has a lot of aluminum in it. But I mean, it was pretty solid, the one we had last year. So this one runs very good. The problem and the concerning aspect with this one is the transmission. So in reverse, it rips exactly like it should. It does great. Drive, it doesn't go into drive, but it does go into first and second gear, but it kind of slips. So it works, but it doesn't grab like it should. I got it at a good price with the title, and it was someone 15 minutes from my house. So I kind of rolled the dice on it, and my thought is I'm going to put the Lucas oil tranny kind of treatment in it. I had a derby car, was it 4 years ago, a wagon that barely ran at all the transmission. I put that in it, and it definitely helped it. Didn't like perfectly fix it, if you will, make it run like normal, but it ran more than well enough that I could have some fun in a derby. Got all the way down to 5th out of almost 28 cars, if I remember right. It was a huge derby. So that is the plan with this one. So we're going to just start in to take the headlights and some small stuff out today. Just a quick look here before we did so. Again, inside, you know, it's kind of your typical pretty dirty. Nice cars, these Buick Lacrosses, but hopefully she's a good derby car. It's got big tires on it. The back, again, she has a nice big trunk. The Buick I had, I didn't even really get a shot to fold it up. Last year I mentioned it was good and bad. The good was it drove all the way to the end. In the first derby I ran it in, and in the second derby I had some fun before somebody slammed my right side. There you go. Bumped the button there. But slammed my right front into another car, and the left strut broke, and then in essence went up through the hood pretty much, and it was done. But big trunk, again, we'll look to get her beat up and in. It's got a spare tire in this one, which is nice. And other than that, again, just a basic stock setup is what we'll go with. Next week or so here, as the weather's nice, kind of pick at some stuff and go from there. But here's just a look at her before we tear into her. Again, 2007 Buick Lacrosse, hoping to have some fun with it. Just to show under the hood again, pretty much the same setup as the Impala we ran earlier this summer. And again, the Buick Lacrosse we had last summer, just some plastic there to take off. Again, these mounts are all the same as the Impala. Big air box, again, we'll take off. We'll unbolt it right there, past the plug. So it has like a natural little filter or like beehive foam to the end, so I don't have to worry about plugging anything over that. Otherwise, you know, she's got a pretty good amount of space between the core and the motor. Not really much to do. Again, there's our battery lines. Get that battery out of there, of course, and then we'll just splice into those lines and run through with our battery lines. Otherwise, a little bit of spray foam kind of around the, not the windshield wiper, we'll take that out, but the fuse box there. And then over here, I mean, really everything is clean. So not a bad setup at all under the hood. Again, the big question with these type of cars that have a lot of aluminum around the wheels, especially the strut, with what is that, the spindle in particular. A lot of cars are going with aluminum. Definitely a little bit weaker than the good old steel, but you got to keep the wheels clean. So again, pretty simple, pretty basic, nothing too intense. The hood mount broke there. That's my temporary one. But we're gonna dive into her, and again, Had some good fortune and some bad fortune. Not sure what put my car last year into limp mode. Hoping this one we don't see that, but we're going to start diving into her, get some parts off, and get her ready to go. Hoping for a good run. So I wanted to throw this into this car build for anyone that stumbles. Again, these are more stumbles into the video, that is, not stumbles, hopefully not with your car. But these are more for, you know, just those of us that are basic stock. I mean, the guys that know cars and really know the different makeups of different cars and manufacturers, they know all this stuff. But something that I knew of that this year I felt the brunt of, I should say, the shot to the face with both of my Cobalts, as they're the same. And this Impala that I ran earlier, as well as this Buick Lacrosse, they're set up the same way. Now, the Impala, she held strong. I did lose the tie rod in the Impala. And that eventually got to where it danced around enough and pulled that CV shaft out, which there's a trick to keeping the CV shaft in there, but I'm not going to get to that now because I don't do it. But a buddy, Lucas, again, shout out to him, mentioned to me how to do that. Put little weld clamps on the inside of it, so if your tie rod breaks or something like that, and that starts dancing, it hits those plates to our normal CV shaft. It'll just pull right out, just like my Cobalt did. But this right here is the weak part. So you see our strut here, our big shock, bolted to, I believe it's a spindle is the name for it, which has the brake calipers on it. And then here's our big disc for our brakes. But this guy is aluminum. Now, I would assume it's lighter and it's cheaper, so that's why so many modern cars have them. But the cars that are really tough, I believe there's a year of Cavaliers, a series of years. I believe the Camrys, it's another reason why they're so tough, not only up front and the motor taking so much heat, but also this is all steel in those cars. And there's other manufacturers too. The Hyundai Elantra I ran, I'm not sure, but this is what they're talking about. This is weak. And when you take a good shot on your wheel, maybe one's all it takes, hopefully more than that. My Cobalt, again, I just ran, it took 3 or 4 pretty good hits before she snapped right where she bolts the strut onto the spindle. And the strut went straight down, which pulled the CV shaft out, not to mention the tire was trapped under the fender well, so it couldn't move. But that is it. So if you are someone that, again, is a straight stock, you know, just love to get in there and dance around for a while, maybe get down to the end for some trophies, you know, you get the cheapest car you can. I'm still kind of in this boat. However, probably next year, I'm going to start being much more peculiar about the cars. Not that I rent, because that's such a good deal I get from my local salvage yard, and I got some good cars, including the Impala and the Elantra I had, and even the Cobalt's a solid car, even though it's got this same setup. But if you're going to buy a car, you're looking for a car, you got to get the cars that don't have this aluminum spindle, because it's just weak. It just does not take much pounding. Again, you can see the A-arm, as I call it, pretty clean looking, looks solid. That thing's going to take a beating. Tie rod, you know, I mean, those are tie rods are pretty similar. You can see where the filler is on this one. Didn't know that until I pulled this off. But yeah, just wanted to show that again. The people that know cars, I mean, they already know this stuff. The people that derby really know this stuff. But that is a lesson I've learned hard this year with my 2 Cobalts. And I think next year we're going to be a little bit more nitpicky. So just swapping out the tires, sold the tires and rims. I only need 2 because I've got the spares on the back now. So I put the better tire up front. It's also easier to get at these bolts underneath to unhook the plastic bumper, which again, if it's in good shape, keep that, maybe resell it, get some of your money back instead of just ripping it off. So just a little look there. We're tearing apart the front end here to sell some parts. So a little update as we're going here. We got the entire front end pretty much ready to go. We got the plastic bumper as well as all the extra kind of pieces off. See, it's joined my clutter over here, but most of that there is a front and back bumper, plastic bumper that is off this Buick. Got the lines all unhooked, including the 2 grounds. There's a ground over here and ground over here. Again, just like the Impala I ran earlier, pulled that all out and then through the side over here where the main line runs to the fuses. And now we've got it kind of not on the ground there and there on the inside on the frame rail instead of outside. We've got the wires run over. I'll secure them later, so easy to do and completely out of the way. Other than that, just ripped up what was left of the battery kind of holder there. 2 10mm bolts, pulled that out, literally like pulled it out, folded it out. Top itself, I just got to sweep that up. Battery lines ready to go, just spliced into it with the positive there, as I had to, it was literally like melted to the terminal was melted to the battery terminal and the hookup. So I just have the bolt running through the U-bolt like I have been all last year or so. The negative, positive, we just had to splice the wires together, and then again a U-bolt got that tight, and that's just sitting there until I can run into the car. Otherwise, up front, again, that big air box here underneath it has the computer, so that will just sit in there in the frame rail for now, but we'll spray foam that. Got, again, the wires all here, and there's that ground there. The other one, right there it is. And then, again, I have the wires right over here, so they're well inside. Nothing at risk there. Took off that kind of extra junk up here, including the latch and all that. So she's clean up front, and that Impala I ran earlier, it took several shots in the front, including nose to nose at the end, and she still had fight in that rebar up front. So hoping this one's tough too, hoping for a good run like that Impala. So airbox again out, just got that kind of honeycomb film there, that's good. So we'll just do some spray foaming over here right before ready to put in the trailer. Other than that, she is ready to go. Oil level checked. The only other thing, and this is what we're about to do, I got the door windows out, trunk, I haven't done anything in there yet other than just taking out all the extra stuff. In fact, just going to show that real quick. This back bumper, actually, the plastic bumper that is, came off super easy. Like just one 10mm bolt underneath, the bolts inside, and then just a small, I think it was a 8mm bolt in the bottom, and then just the kind of rubber pieces that are right here, you can see in the holes along there, and it popped right out. It was the easiest one I've had in a while. We'll again crimp up the trunk later, and you can see there is, again, around the stock fuel tank, there's that stock fuel cell power cord, just like I did with my Impala. I'll unbolt those, unplug it underneath when the battery's off of it so everything's dead, feed it up through, and then I'll take my reciprocating saw drill, kind of cut that back as far as I can without damaging or getting close to the tank, which is just a little bit in front of that. And probably just spray foam it. Last time I had the cord wrapped with a rubber like tubing type stuff. I'll see if I can find some. Maybe just use an old radiator hose I've kept. Just cut the radiator hose and run the wires through that, and just black tape it. That's probably what I'll do. And then I'll spray foam around it, both up here, and I'll have the plugs set underneath in the crossbar there, running from wheel to wheel. But yeah, it kind of stinks running stock with the Impala, the Buick Lacrosse. Again, General Motors, same setup. They have it so far in the back to where usually it's like up there. Well, these guys have it back here, so I'll have to get to that later. Otherwise, again, I already have the spares in the back. We want to be a little bit lower because this car will be bigger, bigger than most of the cars. Planning on running at Crawford. Got the rear seats and everything out up to this point. Kind of stopped. Tomorrow, plan on doing the windshield. But I'm going to pull it inside here. Again, doors are out. And again, don't forget to check your doors. There is in front and both front doors, as well as in the door here, those impact sensors. Again, they're like the yellow plug, kind of makes them stand out. But did all that, and the only thing left, again, this girl runs good, but it has a transmission issue. So the plan is, a little bit scary to say, I've never done this, but I'm going to pull it into my father-in-law's pole barn, pull it up on my ramps, and I'm going to unbolt the tray on the bottom of the transmission. First, I'll do just the back ones, let all the transmission fluid seep out into a plastic container that's cleaned and ready to go, so that way I can reuse the transmission fluid. Instead of trying to take the whole thing out at once and just dumping and making a mess, I'll loosen the back ones first, have that container under, catch all of it, about 10 minutes or so it'll drain. I'll watch some videos online. Drop the pan, then I'll pull the filter straight out, and then this car rips in reverse, but doesn't in drive. In fact, it barely moves in drive. It's like the transmission slipping. While I was doing a little bit of research and stumbled across this video a guy made, just a general random YouTuber 6 years ago. What it is inside the transmission, it's what's it called, an oil, I'll look it up in the next video whenever I'm diving into it, but it's in the transmission, it's these 4 lines that run from one kind of corner to the other, and what happens is it cracks or breaks, and that's why you'll have drive, or excuse me, reverse, but drive doesn't work at all. So he's describing exactly what my car's doing, and that's what we're gonna do. And worst case, said drop the pan, take everything off, and that isn't the issue, or it's a different setup for some reason, even though it's a General Motors transmission, exactly like his was, it should be the same. So that's the next plan of action. So she is ready to go up front, and again, mostly other than the windows, pretty much ready to go. There we go. got cut off there. But one major attempt to fix the transmission, and hopefully we find success. So that's the plan. She's coming together. She runs pretty mean, and she's a big old girl, so hoping it works. And here we are in action. That is our plastic container. We put a cheap but clean bag over it, and we loosened each of the 10mm bolts around the pan. In particular, the back corner we loosened a lot so that it started dripping out the back. This has a this GM transmission has a I guess an overflow plug, you could call it. It is really not set up well, but there isn't really any way to purely drain it other than this. I mean, this is the most efficient way. So that's been dripping for about 5 or 6 minutes. I'll open up a little bit more, but she's draining all out. The transmission fluid was good. So the bag will be able to just puncture a hole in it. So hold it up, puncture a hole in it, run it into a funnel, and easily put it all back into the transmission after we're done. So we're gonna get that pan all the way off, and then again, the filter's right under there, just pop it out and see if we indeed have the error in our car. We think and hope it is, because we should be able to fix it if so. So here we go. And there is our transmission pan off. The gasket is also there, sitting on, you can see there. Pretty much fried, I'm sure, but again, for a derby car, that's perfectly fine. And again, I just kept lowering the kind of bottom side as I've got it up on my ramps, lower and lower, lowered or loosened the ones over here, and it just kept draining out there. A little bit time consuming, but again, we've now got all that training fluid in there and we can reuse it. And next, if I can show it. So there is the filter, or not the filter. Oh yeah, I believe that's the filter. So that guy right there, we're gonna just pop out, and then we're gonna have a look at these guys here. I think that's where our issue is. So got the pan out, we're gonna get the filter out, see what we got. So as we're now to the next day, here is my filter, my transmission filter that I said, you know, just kind of pop it out, which is what they should do. There's not really any trick to it. However, I broke it off right at the top, and I didn't even pull hard on it. I just kind of got under and was pulling a little bit, trying to figure out if there was anything holding it over here. I knew it was going up into the transmission there in the corner, and I'm like, nope, nothing, and then it just broke, and I wasn't even pulling on it. But this thing's probably the original. This thing has 150,000+ miles. I mean, so, I'm sure that it was wore to the point of ready to break, but just have to go up in and pull that piece. It's out. A little bit of a headache, but no big deal. But turns out it was not the oil feed tubes, but it was this tiny piece that broke. So when you're underneath, it's really hard to show, but you're looking up at the transmission. I'll show a quick video here at the end, or a look of it. But this guy sits upside down, and it says, if I can get it to focus, you see how there's like this area here, let me get it to focus, there we go, that a rod in essence pushes on, and then it pushes around the transmission. It's like it should be a continuous circle, this piece. So rod pushes and it goes around the circle. I imagine that's what clicks it into drive, because this was hanging, just hanging. It was actually sitting on top of the filter in between where it should have been. So the rod was getting to it, but it wasn't getting to it like it should, so it wouldn't shift into drive. So we got some JB Weld or JB cement. I'll show it here once I get out of the bag. And we are gonna try to hit with some brake clean first. This piece here and here, it was just a clean brake, crazy, just a clean brake. But we should hopefully be able to get it back up in there, and then I'll weld it on the outside, because if I get weld on the inside, then it'll stick to the actual transmission and it won't move at all. That ain't gonna work. So we're gonna get it really clean, dry it off, get it up there, get a little of the JB Weld. Again, it's like a stick. It's like a little bit gunkier instead of the liquid version. I was talking with the guys, it should work better. Get it on the outside, let it dry, and then I might be able to feed it around to get the other side on, but I think as long as that front side is on, because whenever it pushes it around, and it should indeed go into drive. At least that's the hope. Ordered a filter online, not a big issue, $10. Amazon, it'll be here tomorrow. So a simple fix there. So that's the hope. See if we can get her back together and drive functioning. And here are our tools of destruction. Brake clean, which was like $6.50 a can. hit it, dry it off, use it on brakes, I guess, but it cleans up grease, oil, things like that. So hit that on both the piece here as well as in the transmission, clean it off real good. And then this guy is the JB Weld. So it's a stick, and I was talking with the guys, it's like a little bit more of a jelly, like a gel-like thing. So got the rubber gloves here, gonna get it on and be able to kind of rub it on instead of trying to get the liquid, more liquidy version on there. This should be an easier go of it. So that's our plan. And here a little bit of a tight spot under the car, but here again is inside the pan of the transmission with it off. Here are those oil feed tubes I thought would be cracked, because that's what the guy said online, and that's what my car was doing as well, but it is not. So let's see if I can get to focus. Right up here. Oh, it's tough the way the camera is. There we go. So right up in here is where that piece is, and I can stick my finger in there and move forward right where it needs to go. So again, I'm gonna put that piece up in here, get this fluid out of here with the brake clean, dry it off, and try to weld the outside. It's really tough to get the camera to see, but that's where I'll try to weld the piece to, just enough that we can get a little bit of bite and grab some drive and have a pretty good stock derby car that'll rip around the pit for some fun. At least that's the hope. Here goes nothing. So our parts have arrived, and they're cheap too, $10 over Amazon, but they are exactly what we need. It was funny, like some of these same exact filter, 40 bucks, and then this one was 10. I'm like, it's exact same, has the same numbers and everything as mine. So even came with a gasket, which is nice. This guy, the only issue, which I'm gonna try to get right now, is you see the tip here that comes out and kind of feeds up in, and it has this like little rubber piece. Well, that piece there is like stuck in the transmission. So I'm gonna try to carefully pry that out. And then this just goes in. Our JB Weld is, I think, as good as it can get on the piece that was broke. So we'll put the pan back on, probably put the new gasket on there as long as it's the same size, which it should be. And put the transmission fluid back in, use our bag, kind of poke a hole in it, and then just use our funnel and put it back into the transmission. So here goes nothing. We are hoping for the best. Hopefully we have a working transmission. So a little bit of good news. This is the piece that they give you that sits, if you were right on top there, it slides up into the transmission. Well, this is the piece that's stuck in there from the old filter that I broke this piece, about half of it off whenever I was taking it out, pretty much the whole thing actually. Because it was so tight in there, I couldn't twist this to kind of like ease it out, and I broke it. But the good news is it's the same exact piece, so I don't have to take it out. The problem is it's super, super tight, and that little thing there is just fragile. So we are going to put Vaseline on both the outside of this as well as the inside of this guy that's up in, and then try to gently tap it with our soft mallet hammer there, gently tap it up in to get it in place. Wish me luck. Wanted to show how we have indeed done it. There is our transmission pan back on. It was a son of a gun. The filter, I tapped gently after I put the Vaseline on it, got it in a little bit, but still clearly wasn't enough. But I just made sure it was lined up right and put the pan on, put a bolt here, a bolt up here in the top corner, and then like a bolt here, and just hand screwed it in to where I could feel it press against it, and it wasn't there. And then I just gently, because it's such cheap plastic, pressed right underneath where that piece is. It's kind of right here. So I kind of just gently pressed up, and it slid it the rest of the way in. And then I tightened those bolts by hand, and then put the other 10 millimeter bolts in. So I believe it is incorrect. We will see if we were able to fix her hopefully well enough for 15-20 minutes in a derby pit. But before we move the car, I'm gonna loop the tranny lines. So right underneath here, it's hard to see right now, there they are, the transmission lines running into be cooled off. We're gonna cut them right there at the end, both of them, while the transmission's empty. You don't have to worry about it. Typically not a lot of transmission comes out, but this way I don't have to worry about it. And then again, this little piece from the local hardware store, I'll slide it. I'm actually gonna put Vaseline on it. I don't know why I ever didn't think of this. Put Vaseline on it and then slide it in. And then again, just my simple clamps, one on each side. We'll have it looped so we don't lose any transmission fluid as our front end gets punched, and kind of try to press it up in. Again, I don't like to make them tight so that as you're possibly getting pressed in the front, you know, if you have it tied to something real tight, then it could pull the transmission apart, and then you're draining fluid and you're dead in the water. So final prep, and then we're going to put the transmission fluid back in and say a small prayer and hope we got it right. We'll see. As you can see, we were outside. We are transmission together. Shout out to my wife. She helped me. The bag idea sort of worked. We put the container on top of the motor here, right by there with our funnel where the transmission dipstick is, and you put it in, and then we carefully tried to, I held it up and she pricked the corner of it. The bags were so cheap though, they were leaking pretty much from the get-go. So we spilled a little bit of training fluid in the back of the motor. I'm going to try to dry it off a little bit because it smokes right away, and try to clean that up. But it it is together, and while reverse seems to still rip like it should and did before, drive, the D drive, it doesn't do anything still, which that seems to be like a sensor or something, because I've got an alert on the dash, not for transmission, but for like something, traction sensor. I can't remember exactly what it is. But putting it down to 1 and 2 is where it worked before. 1, and I didn't, you know, rip on it hard. I'm baby shifting, and I'm going to baby the shifter as long as I can in the Derby, you know. I mean, put her in gear slowly, and then unless you got to get out of the way from someone putting a big wheel hit or something on you. But it did seem to not slip. Like before, I'd put it in 1 and you get on the gas and it was like you were spinning the wheels and nothing was happening. And it definitely took off a little quicker. I didn't hit it hard. So the true test will be when we're in the pit and all that. But it's working well enough, so a success. So final tidbits, we have it out here. Again, got the battery lines, everything ready. The windshield, it's not a super hot day, but we're gonna leave her sit out, warm up a little bit. Get the windshield out. While that's happening, I'll get the carpet out, unbolt my seat so I can get the carpet out here, and then just kind of clean up. I just unplugged all the airbags. The one over there, again, I started doing this and haven't had an issue yet. There's usually right inside, I'll show, because the dashes, there we go, we're stuck. The dashes, sometimes it's real easy to pop them up and get to the actual plugs like over there and just unplug it and leave it there. But there's usually a main one, and again, the yellow gives it away for your airbags, the sensors and everything. Just unplug this, so that should be good. And again, I unplug all the sensors anyways, but I like to unplug the airbags too, so that should be fine. Shouldn't be an issue, and I've done that the last 2 cars actually. And then just unplug the, again, wiring going back into the car, as you're likely going to take shots. So just kind of some final tidbits, cleaning up. I looped the line up front, as I mentioned, the training line. I actually, to show this, so you can see it wasn't a perfect, that's just a little bit of fluid leaking out of the radiator here from the line. But it was a little pinch here, so I wanted to pull it because it needed to be pulled just a little bit to this side. So I've got my ratchet straps running through there, not super tight, but just putting a little bit of tension on it to keep this from not being too bent. And again, that works well enough. I've never had an issue with that. So just some final prep. The wiring, again, is ready to be secured. Again, we're going to foam spray that corner over there with the computer there in it. Glass removed, just kind of clean up stuff, and then take our jack and again just press up and under the trunk. It folded up beautifully in the Cobalt, best it's ever folded up. Make a mess with the glass, clean it up, and then we'll have our final look. So everything seems to be coming together as well as it can. Hopefully this old girl, the transmission holds up, because she's got some fight in her if so. Oh, and the only other thing that I will have to do, and I'll make one more video add to this here. I'm going to unbolt that. That's again, I'm running the stock tank. That's the power going down to it. I'm going to unbolt that, unplug the plug underneath, which is simple. Just back it up in the stand. And then I'm going to cut with my reciprocating saw, my Sawzall, as well as my drill if I need to. Kind of make that as big as it can and back as far as it can. And then I'm going to set it in an old radiator hose, and then kind of spray foam probably a little bit around, like I did with my Impala, around here and maybe underneath. We'll see. So final prep, we're excited. Did something we never did before, and it seems to work as well as it could have. So some final prep just to show as we're the night before and finishing up a couple stuff, but that is again where the plug goes down in and sets, and then underneath, so that's the only bad thing in my opinion about these Impala and this Buick Lacrosse. I mean, it's in essence the same exact setup for the car I ran an Impala earlier. You can see how right there it is. So these plugs just go right up into the plug there. They are really pretty close to the rear end. I mean, if you're rolling up the back end nicely, you know, you're gonna be into that plug. And our last look here before we cut this video off and spray foam, not only back here, but also up around the wiring up front, and she is good to go. But again, if you run the Impala or these Buick Lacrosse in a stock position, the stock tank is really well out of the way. I mean, it's rolled up there nice. I mean, not an issue, but this stock wiring is. So I was going to do it like I did my Impala last tour. I loosened up the wiring and dropped it down in between the kind of rear axles there. And then I spray foamed a little bit in the actual between there. And then I spray foamed on the wire up around here. But I didn't like how, as it got smashed up, I was really fortunate I didn't cut that wire because it was so low. Even with, I had rubber around it there, but here I'm just using, again, save your radiator hoses. I just took a utility knife, slid it down the side so I could wrap around the wires, and I took zip ties and tied them up. But we're gonna do it like this to where I have, I'll show underneath real quick. So you can see, there we go. I got both wires that are running right from the tank. So right over this kind of, there we go, over the frame there, the rear axle. And I have it running up in between the radiator hose there. And then I just zip tied it. And I could use the Sawzall there to expand that. So that is as tight and as kind of out of the way of the trunk. And again, I'm gonna press the trunk up here, lift it so it rolls up with the jack. So should be good there. The only other thing I'll do here, other than, well, really is the spray foam, but I've got this wire just kind of sitting here now. I'll kind of secure it over here afterwards. I've just got it holding it here. So I'll spray foam not only around this hole, but again, down around the wire there, just a little bit inside there, the axle, and a little bit of spray foam around the plug here so it doesn't move. And then I'll kind of leave the wire here, and that is it. So best you can do, running the stock tank in the stock position with the stock wiring. I mean, if we're smashing up that much, that's a lot of back end. That's a good run, and hopefully we're down to the end. But that's how I did it. So we're getting to the spray foam and button her up. She is ready to go.